My name's JJ. I'm 30 years old. My clean date is 10/24/22. I was born in Dayton, Ohio. Um, I'm the youngest of six. My mom, my family was pretty normal. I don't, no one in my family has this disease of addiction or alcoholism that I know of. Um, so I grew up in Centerville, and um, I I had everything. I think I had every opportunity that I could have had, that a kid really wanted, for a good life. So I don't necessarily know where I I decided to take the wrong turn. Um, I know I I played sports a lot growing up. My mom got me into sports. I never really school. I've always been smart, but I never really applied myself to school. Um, and I I gravitated towards sports, specifically baseball. Um, and I remember we'd go to my dad would take me to tournaments. I mean, I've been in tournaments all the way down in Nashville, Tennessee, and things like that. But my parents were divorced, so I had a stepdad, who I've known since I was four, and I'm really blessed to have a guy show like him in my life. Now that I've gotten to this point, um, but so my mom and my stepdad lived down in towards Cincinnati, and I would travel back and forth on the weekends. I'd come up here to visit my dad, and I lived down in like Loveland area in Cincinnati, and that's where I went to school up until about, I think it was sixth grade. I moved up to Centerville with my dad, and I was the new kid in school up here. I didn't have a lot of friends, so sports really allowed me to uh, make make these friends and things of that nature. And I mean, everything was pretty normal. I think the first time I drank, I remember this. We were on a family vacation in South Carolina, and me and my whole family was there, and me and my stepbrother stole this 6 pack from him, and we took it downstairs, and he drank one, and I don't know what age I was probably 12 years old when I think about it. I don't know exactly. I was really young, but he drank one, and the minute I drank five, as and looking back on it now, it makes me realize that I've always had a physical allergy to alcohol and drugs, because I had no shut off, even at such a young age. And I went upstairs, and they're all laughing. They thought it was funny that I was like passed out on the floor, and but I didn't touch it again until um, high school. I was like 16. I had stopped playing sports. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why I stopped playing sports. I was a little bit smaller. I never really grew, so it was one of those things where I was always really good at defense in baseball, but the hitting wasn't there, and I wasn't confident in myself to make the team and play varsity and stuff like that. So I was just looking for like people to fit in with, and in high school I didn't have that. So the people that accepted me, were people going to the parties and smoking weed and things like that. And I it started with weed for me. And then it started just drinking on the weekends at these parties. And I remember even back then I would black out at these parties, and I would act crazy. Like, I remember one time I was leaving one, and I punched a car, and I remember hiding from the police and doing all this crazy stuff. And then, when that it was cool for a little bit, but then I got into trying to sell weed. And that's when my trouble started, when I was probably like 17 years old. I started skipping school. I'd come up with this crazy idea that being expelled for a day was better than going to Saturday school, because it was more important for me to go to these parties on Friday night, stay up all night. So I wasn't going to Saturday school, and I kept getting expelled. And me and the principal, we went back and forth a lot. So I mean, he was like my arch nemesis for a little bit. And they just had enough of me, and I think back now, like I would too, because I didn't understand. I thought it was cool to skip class, go smoke weed, and influence kids to do all this crazy stuff, and try to do something that clearly that's not who I was intended to be, and just feed my ego. So I had friends, and I felt accepted, like I was saying. But with that brought legal troubles, and when I was 17, I got into the juvenile system. Judge Capizzi back then ran the drug court for Montgomery County juveniles, and that's what part of my story is some institutionalization, and that's where it started for me. I would get out, and they could only give you 30-day sanctions, because I only had misdemeanors for possession of marijuana and scales, because I was running around trying to sell it and just stupid stuff. So I would do the 30 days, and I'd get out and I'd go straight back to these people, because I didn't know any better. My dad wasn't really disciplining me. I had no consequences other than going to jail, and at that point in the time, I thought it was cool. I thought it made me tough, and it like built up my ego and stuff. So I did that in and out of juvenile. I ended up getting expelled from high school and in and out of juvenile until I was 18, and they let me off probation because I was an adult. So in my juvenile years, from 17 to 18, I might have been out for that year, maybe a month, because I'd only last a week. It was not normal for a kid to go through that, and I just got so numb to it. I got so used to it, and this life of crime was so exciting to me, and the adrenaline rush and all these things, and the money became addicting, and girls were talking to me because I had money and I had all this stuff, and that was how I was attracting people to come my way. So 18, I got off of probation, still doing the same thing. I had this crazy idea that I was going to go to Michigan, because at that time, medicinal marijuana had just come around. This is like 2011, and I went up there to go do some stuff as far as that goes, and I would come back down to Ohio and sell it to all these kids that I know. I ended up getting in more trouble. I did 2.5 years for felony trafficking of marijuana and all that stuff. Still didn't want to change, but a few years go by. I think it was 2017. Oh yeah, what happened when I was in Michigan? I met my friend's dad, and he introduced me to cocaine. I was 18, and I never forget it, because they were all out there smoking, and he looked at me and he's like, "You want to do this?" And I was like, "Well, what is it?" And I was up there alone, scared little 18-year-old kid. I didn't know. And I'm looking for like this dad figure to kind of protect me while I'm there. So I'm like, this is cool. This is what he wants me to do. And it's my best friend at the time, what I thought was my best friend. So yeah, I did it. And then after I got in trouble for coming down here trying to sell it, I got caught on the highway on 71. And I brought this stuff back to my friend group down here. And I said, you guys got to try this stuff, because you can just drink forever on this. And I got really into like the bar scene, and the cocaine really took a hold of me, and I was still caught up in the lifestyle that brought. So I'm trying to sell that, and I end up. What happened with that? I ended up going to. Back in and out for some misdemeanor stuff with jail. I'd been in and out of rehab, but that seed got planted for me really young, and I think that was probably like the best thing that could have happened for me. because I realized really young that I had this problem, right? I didn't, I didn't understand that there was action that had to be required for me to recover from this. I thought that I could go around all these old people and live that same lifestyle that I was living. I just wasn't going to use, and for me that's just not possible. So I end up selling this cocaine, and I got a warrant out for misdemeanor probation because in my mind misdemeanors they don't matter. It's just county jail. It's not any serious time as far as prison goes. And um, I'm at my dad's house with a warrant, and I had told him, I said, look, I need somewhere to go. I'm just gonna stay here for tonight, and then in the morning I'm gonna find somewhere to go. Well, the morning came, and I had all this cocaine on me, and I remember I took a shower. I got out of the shower, and I did some, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out where I'm going, and my bedroom door opens up, and in come two Dayton police officers with guns pointed at me, and my mom had called the police because, looking back at it now, she was scared. She was scared for my life, and I put her in a really, really tough position. That today I understand why she did this, but at the time I was very, very resentful that she would do that to me because at the end of the day it took away my fun. Um, but I had put all the cocaine up, so it was sitting in my room. So I go to jail on this misdemeanor, and I was down in the county for probably like 60 days, maybe. I don't know. They called me to court, and I think I'm getting out. I think they're going to let me out early, but they take me down to the arraignment room, and I guess my dad had found the cocaine and turned it into the police. So with that came a felony 3 possession, and that's when kind of I found my first process at wanting to get sober. And at the time, I didn't understand why. I didn't talk to him for 5 years. Even when I was trying to get my life right, I still blamed him, and I blamed everybody around me. I blamed probation. It's their fault. They're making it way too hard on me. I can't do this. So I'm continuing to go in and out of jail. They ended up sending me to prison, but in between that process of that probation span, they end up sending me to this place called the Monday program, which is kind of a treatment thing. It's a 6-month thing, and while I was there, it gave me enough time to get my head clear, and I was making some good decisions. I had told my probation officer I wanted to go to sober living out of the Monday program, and she was all for it. She thought it was a great idea. So I got through that. I got to the sober living. And while I was in sober living, I got introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. And, the guy running that sober living, looking back now on what he was trying to do for me, now I know. He planted a really good seed in my head because he showed me how to work a program of recovery. And at the time, I was just one of those guys in there, still going after girls, going after people. Look at me, I'm clean now, and I wasn't. Again, the biggest thing I found is the action that is required into this. So I'm not trying to go like deep into like war stories and things like that, but that planted a seed. So I remember I was telling my probation officer that I was ready to leave. I was good, and I had about 11 months. And she wasn't having it. She wasn't going to let me leave, and then that goes back to me deflecting, on everybody else's causing my problems. I hadn't accepted yet that I got myself in this situation because of my actions, and I hadn't got to that point yet. And this was 2016. 16 to 17 is when I had that time of 11 months. So I left against my probation officer's advice, and I went to my friend's house, and I went to a meeting my first or second day, out first couple days there. And then I remember one day he was at work, and this, you know, this is when I was at his house. I was stressed out about, probation. I'm not being honest with him. I'm worried I'm going to go to jail. I'm not really in AA. I'm going around it, and I've come to find there's a difference, which I'll get into. There's a big difference, and so I'm just going around these meetings, and I'm not meeting people or talking to them. So I find this bottle of whiskey in his fridge, and I started drinking it, and I didn't want anyone to know that I wanted to do cocaine, because all these people that I used to hang out with were saying they were so proud of me, and I wanted to put on that front like I had changed and all this stuff, when deep down in reality I wasn't willing to put into work to change. So I reached out to somebody that I had met in the Monday program, and I asked him, I said, can you get me some coke, 'cause I'm drunk? And he's like, yeah, come pick me up. So I go and pick this guy up, and I take him to some place, and I give him the money. He gets out, he goes, gets it, comes back, and I'm like, okay, well, I want to do a line before I get home, because I had to drive him back home, and I'm drunk. And one thing about cocaine and alcohol is it kind of sobers me up a little bit and allows me to drink more. That's why I choose to do that. So that happens, and then I do the line, and I'm like, this isn't very good coke. I didn't taste that taste. I didn't know what it was. It was sweet. It definitely wasn't. It wasn't cocaine. It turned out to be fentanyl. And at the time I thought it was bad coke. So I drop him off, I'm driving home, and I'm getting really hot, and I'm starting to sweat and things like that. I'm driving back to my buddy's house in Fairborn, and I get there, and the insanity of my disease is like, well, it's just bad coke. I don't know it's fentanyl, so I do more. Next thing I know, I lay down on the couch, and I just go to sleep. And my friend gets off work. This is probably 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. My friend gets off work, and he probably comes home around 6:30. And from what I was told, I was laying on top of my big book, all my recovery literature, on the couch, with blood coming out of my ears and my nose. He said I was barely breathing. I was blue. And he called the EMTs. He called the fire department. And I remember the Narcan. I don't remember getting Narcan. I remember, like, one thing I remember is, like, it's okay. I remember hearing that. I remember, it's okay, you're all right. And it was just white. It was just white light. Next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital, and I'm just screaming for water. I want water because I'm so dehydrated, and these nurses are all around me, and I don't know what happened. I'm so lucky to be alive after that situation, and a lot of situations I've been in. There's a reason I'm still here today. So that still wasn't enough, though. I remember I was in the hospital, and I called my family, and they were so mad at me that they didn't even come see me, and I still blamed them for everything. This is your fault. This is probation's fault. They're making it way too hard on me. I hadn't surrendered. I hadn't surrendered to my disease. I hadn't surrendered to God. I hadn't surrendered to any of this stuff yet. I just, looking back on it now, I wasn't to that point in my life where I was completely done, and I was ready to do what it takes to recover. So the fast forward a few years, the cocaine and the alcohol, it gets bad. I got to the point where I didn't want to go around people. I chose to drink, by myself in my house. This is after I get out of prison. I end up going to prison after that relapse. That happened. They sent me to prison for 14 months. I get out. I think I was out 6 months, and I just continued to drink. I knew about AA and I knew about all this stuff, and I would meet people and I'd be like, well, this isn't who I am. I know I'm supposed to be sober, but I'm, again, not willing to do what it takes. I keep saying that because it's so important to me, to remember to not get complacent and to it's action. It's not what I say, because I've done that for so long. I've said I want to be sober. I want to have a good life, and I am capable of these things, but I just wasn't willing to do it. So my disease progressed to the depression got so dark, and I remember I would wake up towards the end, and my whole day was revolved around drinking and using and manipulating people to get what I want. And everybody who really cared about me, I shit on them. I didn't care about them. All I cared about was using, and I couldn't hold a job. I've never been able to hold any type of job because my life becomes so unmanageable. Because, like I'm saying, my whole thought process is revolved around getting high or drunk, and while I'm at work, I can't do that, and I resort to this idea that I know how to sell drugs to make my money, and in reality, it got to the point where I couldn't even do that. It was like a monkey working at a banana farm. It made no sense because I'm using all of my product, and I'm losing money, and I'm sitting there at my house, and I'm starting to realize, like, I'm gonna go back to prison for a really long time this time, because I just got caught with a good amount of cocaine, and I got in trouble for that, and if I get caught again, I'm going to get in trouble. So these thoughts are starting to come to my head. And I meet this girl who was clean, and this is at the very end of my addiction, my disease, or my active addiction. I meet this girl who's clean, and she would talk to me and tell me, like, look, you need to go to treatment. And she put the idea back in my head, and I don't think she'll ever understand how much that means to me, because I think that, am I supposed to be with this person? I don't know today. I don't really talk to her like that anymore, but I really think God sent her to me, because I'd got to the point where I was in my house and I was drinking and using so much that I was suicidal. I vividly remember nights where I'd lay in my bed and I couldn't stop. I just could not stop drinking, and I'd tell myself it's time to go to bed, but I'd lay there for probably 30, 40 minutes with these thoughts, and I'd blurt out, I hate myself, and I want to die, and all this stuff, because I could not quit, and I'd go to another line, and it was just insane. And so I end up, I'm on probation, misdemeanor probation right now, in my PO. I didn't think that they wanted to help me, so I stopped reporting, and I end up in the county jail because I stopped reporting. That was it. They offered me, I got this girl in my ear telling me to go to treatment. Actually, no, what happened was I ended up going to treatment. I ended up going to Woodhaven in the summertime, and it was strictly for her. It was strictly to be with this girl, which, from my experience, that also doesn't work. I had to figure out to do it for myself and not anybody else, which is where I come to a couple months after I get out of. I go through Woodhaven. She ends up meeting somebody and gets with him while I'm in there, and then as soon as I get out, I lasted 3 days because I didn't go to sober living. I was doing it to be with her, not for myself. And when she was with somebody else, I told her, well, what's the point? What's the point of doing this? And I hadn't, again, not putting in the action, that I've come to learn. So, but while I was in Woodhaven, I met my sponsor. Good Shepherd would come pick us up, and they'd bring us to outside meetings. So I end up meeting my sponsor. And one thing Woodhaven taught me about, as far as the action that goes in, is to call people. I didn't know that. I didn't know how important it was to build a sober network and to meet these people. So that's one really good thing I took out of Woodhaven, and I learned how to use the phone. That's a big part of my recovery today is the phone and staying connected with these guys. So I meet my sponsor, and I'm starting to do step work with them while I'm in Woodhaven. But as soon as I got out, I told you, I lasted a few days. I went to a meeting, and everything looked good on the outside, but it was the wrong reason for me doing it. And when that reason wasn't there, well, I didn't want to do it anymore. So I end up getting really bad again for a couple months, and I end up going to jail right around my birthday. I was in jail this year on October 24th, not 24th, 7th, which is my birthday, October 7th. And I got there, and something was different. I had got to the point where I was so comfortable with jail because I come to realize now I was scared to grow up. There was fear of growing up that I'd got so used to it. But this time, I was done. I was withdrawing off alcohol and stuff like that, laying under my blanket, shaking, sweating it all out, sleeping for, 18 hours a day almost. My family wasn't picking up the phone. There was nobody left. I had pushed everybody away, and all I had left was me sitting in jail. And I started really thinking, like, is this what I want with my life? Because this is the last, from 17 to where I'm at now, 30. I've spent almost 7 years incarcerated, and I thought about my childhood growing up, great family and all these things. And this is just, I had come to the realization, this is not who I am. This is not who God intended me to be. And I was done, like I said. So I went in front of the judge a few weeks later. They had offered me 30 days to sit in jail. I'd get off probation, and I'd be a completely free man. And I told them no, because I had realized that wasn't going to solve my problem. That would not solve my problem. It would make it worse, because I needed treatment at that point in time, and I was ready. So I went in front of the court. I went in front of the judge, and I asked for forgiveness, that I want to go to treatment. I'm not done. I am ready to get my life together. And I said I'm willing to do whatever it takes to never come back to jail. And I meant it. There was tears in my eyes. People in the courtroom were, as I'm walking out of the courtroom, people are shaking my hand saying, good luck. Like, thank you. Like, that was inspirational. And he trusted me. And he let me out, let me get myself together. And I went to this treatment center in Greene County named Coach. And treatment there was hard. It was different. They don't provide your food. My family at this point is nothing to do with me, because I've said this before. I've so many false promises of I'm gonna change. So they're not helping me, and I'm relying off the food pantry, and that's 2 weeks worth of food at a time out of a food pantry is not a lot of food. There was days I so hungry, didn't know where I was gonna. I'm worried I'm gonna run out of food to eat while I'm sitting in treatment, and I was miserable. But one thing I had come to realize, was AA is gonna save my life. AA is gonna save my life, and I would tell them that in treatment. Some of them liked it. Some of the counselors were like, "You're courageous," and he's like, "I respect your honesty for telling me that you're not, you understand that there's a step after this, and this treatment thing, and even where I'm at now is not the rest of my life." But there is a solution for the rest of your life. There has been a solution that was created. I don't know how they did it back in 1939, how they came up with it. It blows my mind to this day how they figured this out. But I I went all in, and I remember one night at the coach, um, they would take us to outside meetings and things like that. They were good about that. Um, and they took us to this outside meeting, and it was November 5th, and I heard this lead about a guy with a story similar to mine in and out of jail. And one thing that really stuck out to me, I remember leading up to this, because I knew what to do. I knew what to do as far as how to work my program, because of that place I was at before. The guy taught me how to do it. I just wasn't doing it. And I remember I'd be calling my sponsor, like, man, I'm forcing my prayer right now. I'm praying, you know, but it just doesn't seem natural. And that went on for my first few weeks at the coach. So November 5th, I go to this lead, and I hear this guy who I talk to this day, that's in the program, and I got home and I had already prayed. Thank you for keeping me sober for the day and all those things. And then as I'm laying there, my mind's racing, and something comes out of me, and I tell people this all the time. It wasn't me, but I surrendered, and I kept repeating in my head, and it came so natural that I just know it wasn't my thoughts. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm done, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes, God, because I don't want to live this life anymore, and whatever it takes, I'm going to do it, and I mean it, and I meant it. And that was really early in this journey that I'm on now. And from there I started putting action in, and this is where I've got to where I'm at by this action. I mean, I started going to these meetings out in Fairborn, and I would meet people, and I took it upon myself to get their phone numbers and call them and utilize them, and get them to take me to these places, because I knew that I needed to get in. I needed to get in recovery. I wanted to feel accepted, because that was what I was seeking the whole time that started my drinking and using, was wanting friends. So I knew that I needed to get around good people, and I had my sponsor, and I started doing all this step work with him, and I was really lucky to meet this guy, because when that's one thing, I think it was a God thing putting him in my life. 20 years he's got 21 years, and he's taken me around all these people with a lot of time of sobriety that I talk to, and I ask for advice. I don't make decisions on my own without running it by these like mentors I have in my life, because when I make my own decisions, sometimes I like instant gratification, and I fly off the deep end. So I rely on these people. Flash forward, coming, I leave the coach. My sponsor gets me in here to Good Shepherd. I'm still going through the steps, and I'm, today, what my normal day, the thing I found is routine. It's waking up. It's reading my big book. It's reading my daily reflection. It's journaling. And if I don't do those things, I've done it so long now every single day, that when I don't do those things, my day is off, and I get all up in here. I get in my head. I start overthinking. I don't turn my will over to God, and it's a great feeling that when your body craves recovery. I've become addicted. I've become addicted to the feeling I get from AA and recovery. So it's that in the morning. It's continuously talking to guys in the program. I sponsor somebody now. I'm taking somebody through the steps because I've completed them, and I have the ability to give that back. And I think about all that stuff that I went through was supposed to happen. I think everybody's story is when they get to the point of complete surrender and they have the willingness and the desire to do it. I have something to offer. I have someone. I'm gonna meet somebody like me with the same story, and I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened to me. This is what I did. And I can relate to you. And that's a gift. Because not everyone understands that stuff. So today I try to help. I try to help people a lot. Um, I've come really far, and I've just understood that I have to put my recovery above all else, above relationships with women, sometimes family. I don't involve my family in my recovery, because the most important thing to me is that, because if I don't do that above all else, I'm gonna lose it anyway. A job. I'm about to start school, trade school here. I've got a couple opportunities with that. There's one starting in May and there's one starting in the fall. I'm gonna try to become an electrician, and none of that's possible without, um, first and foremost, God, um, Alcoholics Anonymous, Good Shepherd. Um, you know, I do the work. You know, I put into action, but it's the people that were there before me that have showed me what to do that I'm so grateful for, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't have done any of this without them. Um,